Okay, so I'm Matt. I work for a company called Explorer. You can reach me on the email address here or follow me on Twitter. Visit us on the website here. So this short presentation is going to be entitled Tab Lock. So this is a Chrome extension which I've created, which modifies some of the features in Page Designer and adds new functionality to Page Designer as well. So if you're interested in getting Tab Lock, you need to visit this case-sensitive URL below, and that will take you to the Chrome Web Store where you can add Tab Lock into Chrome, and I've currently got 319 users. So I want to just demonstrate the main features of Tab Lock. So this is my APEX environment, and it's non-default, so I've rearranged the tabs. So this is one of the features which came with APEX 5.1. So 5.1 came with loads of new features, including the grid, which I'm a fan of, and the ability to relocate tabs within the same group and within different tab groups as well. So this is the functionality where you can move this tab and drop it over here, move this one over there. So say that one's in that position there, and I press F5, and it saved it for my user on that session, and it's persisted. It can also move it from different tab groups, so move it to the second tab group, or move one over here. That's the first tab group. So there's 3 tab groups you can see. Okay, let's refresh. Did you know there's actually a 4th tab group, which is down the bottom here? You can actually relocate buttons and regions. Did you know that? Sadly, that doesn't persist, and you can also do these crazy things like move them up to there and then drag and drop from left to right. So you can do that, but sadly, that doesn't persist. When I first saw this, I'm a big fan of customizing my layout, and one of the things I was doing was when I was clicking on different tabs, because I'm quick on the mouse, I was accidentally moving the tab, see, like that, and I see so many developers like trying to click on the tab but accidentally move it. And for me, this was kind of annoying, and I needed to fix this. So the first feature of Tab Lock, there are several features, was the ability to lock your tabs. So Tab Lock runs up in the corner here, and it's an open padlock. So when you finished moving tabs, you would lock it into place, and now I can no longer move tabs to different groups. And the main objective is I will not accidentally move tabs around, which is the primary purpose. So if you want to move tabs again, you would unlock, and then dynamic actions there, page search back where it was, and then you would just lock them into place. So that's the first feature. The second feature is because 5.1 was new at the time, and most of Explorer customers were on 5.0 at that time. I thought, well, why not backport this feature into 5.0? Because I knew, basically, I worked out how the APEX team were enabling the movement of tabs, and I could disable it anyway, so the same feature is enabled for 5.0. So if you get Tab Lock, visit a 5.0 website, Page Designer, it will detect, and you've got the same functionality minus the ability for moving tabs into different tab sets. When I enable that feature, just strange things were happening, so it's just within the same tab groups of 5.0. So that's features 1 and 2. The third feature, by this time everyone in Explorer, all the consultants, were using Tab Lock, and a guy on our team called Colin Archer, who's our REST Web Services JSON auth expert, he says, I really like this Chrome extension, but what would be really good if you could bypass the focus dialog page. So this is it. I make a change on my page, and I run the application. And what it's actually done is, this is the runtime. This is the admin page. It's loaded up fine, but it couldn't focus the tab. So my thumb was hovering over spacebar to hit the try again, or you move the mouse and you hit the try, again. So it would be a good feature if you could bypass that, and that's actually enabled now. So if you right-click and go down to options, it's disabled by default, but you can enable it. So you just tick that box, bypass, and refresh Page Designer. So now make the same change. Let's move that. Run the page, bypassed, you don't see it. So that might save you a bit of time there. So run it again, it's bypass. So there's actually 2 dialogues. There's the focus dialogue, which I've been talking about, and there's the run dialogue as well, which is slightly different, which can easily be bypassed. You just need to read the instructions, and you can bypass that one. I thought that would be quite easy to bypass. All I need to do was set a timer, look for that focus dialog, hit the button, and everything will be fine. Unfortunately, it didn't work out like that. The best I could do was just remove the dialog. So how it actually works at the moment is each tab enters a certain phase, and the first phase is the loading phase. So I set like a global variable, remembering which is the tab ID of the last tab to go into that loading phase, and then basically put the focus onto that tab. So that's how it works. Okay, 3 features. So the 4th feature is something you might like, and it solves this problem. So on processes, I'm starting to write a piece of code here. So I've declared a username, and I'm going to set the value, and I'm going to finish off writing this code. So I can see I'm on page 101. So I want to access the page item for username. So I do p101 underscore user. So at this point, I'm a bit stuck, a bit confused. Is it just user, or is it username, or is it user underscore name? And I'm a bit stuck of what it is. So what you have to do, I have to copy this into clipboard, I have to cancel back here, I have to go to rendering, and then, oh, it was called P101 username. Right, okay, back onto here, open the process, paste it from the clipboard, go back in, type it in. So this problem is now solved. If you were in code editor here, you would right-click, find tab lock, and you list all your regions here. So I've just got one region, and it's called admin2, and I can see now it's called P101 username. So I can go down on that, and I can pick my choice of just the name, the colon, or the ampersand dot. Well, I'm in PL SQL, so I'll pick the middle one, semicolon. That's it. So that compiles, and that's fine. So that ability is enabled in code editor, as you've just seen, in text areas, text items. You can use that one there, or any text areas. The same thing is available. You've also got enabled substitution strings. So I'm on APEX 5.1. If I go to substitution strings, I see a list which is applicable for 5.1. If you're on 5.0, you see a shorter, different list. You've got the same things there. So I can choose maybe app user, and I can compile that in. So that's the 4 features which are currently available for Tablock if you want to download and install it into Chrome. But I have been working on some future features as well, which I'd like to introduce to you. So for developers which are not too keen on IntelliSense, I'm working on packages here. So we can use packages, maybe apex error, add error, and it types that into the screen there. So let's put something like my error. Now, this final parameter, display location, is required. I always forget what it is, and it's a constant. I have to look at the documentation and copy and paste it in. So I thought it would be nice to add a little snippet there. And you can choose, I put all 4 in, and it fills it in. So that is compilable. Let's do something else. Let's do packages and Apex util. And you can use the mouse wheel here to go through a list of more. Prepare URL. And then I get to the same problem. What's the URL format? What's the 4th or 5th element? Okay, let's have a snippet for that. So you can use the FP syntax, and you can change them, add substitution strings in, or a bit more friendlier version is the second option, where you've got, it's filled out a little bit more for you. So hopefully they can release these in the coming weeks. A bit more testing required. Other little things as well. Let's try username here. So quite often I like to have my labels with an uppercase at the first letter, and I thought it'd be quite nice to like control double click. So it changes the case. Double it again, uppercase, lowercase, back to the original. So I thought that might be quite useful as well. So I think my time might be up, but I'll give you the final slide again. So thanks for listening.
Great. Thanks for showing that. Quite some useful features. While Martin sets up, we got roughly 20 seconds for a question. Please not at the back of the room. I can't run that fast. Okay. Well, Matt's here. All right, next speaker, Martin Giffey de Souza. That's in your passport, right?
For this? Yeah, no, not the middle name.
All right. So, just say when.
Can I say when?
There is
Oh, that is not good. Hold on, let's try this again. Perfect.
all right.
Okay. So the goal of what I'm going to show you is to show you what's possible out there. I'm going to blow through 5 different things for you very quickly. So just remember what's possible. Now, before I start, by the way, this talk's going to be about tooling and what tools you use. How many people here are using the same tools, like SQL Developer, Toad, or PL SQL, that you used, let's say, 5 years ago? Okay. How many people are using the same tools that they used 3 years ago? 4? Okay. And 2, so you're doing it wrong. I'm just telling you that because you constantly have to be improving. The world is changing, and if you're using the same tools that you used 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even up to a year ago, you're not constantly improving and getting faster at things. So I'm going to show you these. I'm going to show you 5 tricks that I think will help out to improve your tool set and make you develop quicker. And Matt's tab lock is a great example to help expand your toolkit. So the first thing is, it's called a text expander. And I'm going to actually mirror on what Matt was going on with tab lock of the URL format for Apex. And we all know it goes like F*P is equal to, and most people remember it's app ID, and then you kind of forget after that, right? It's this long thing. Well, I have this text expander where I type in a URL, and it puts it all in for me, right? Or, for instance, every time I need to write a new procedure in Oracle, I type proc, and I type in my procedure name, let's call it test, and all of a sudden I've got everything to get up and running with my procedure. I've got all the logger stuff, etc. So this can help you a lot. So just Google text expander. There's a lot of them for Mac, for Windows. I think there's only one really good one. The next thing is, how many people develop in SQL Developer or Toad or any one of those tools? Okay, you're all doing it wrong. And the reason why is it's slow. There's nothing wrong with the tool, it's just slow. And I'm going to show you some examples. So some people will actually go and take the package and drag and drop. I don't even know how to do this because I don't really do it that often, or I never do it. You probably drag and drop the package in, right? Some of you will do it and develop in the database. Other people will actually take a file and drag and drop in here and edit it, right? Which is a simple, understandable way of developing, but it's just not quick because SQL Developer is very Oracle focused, but it's not developer focused like something like Atom or Code. So I'm going to show you how to develop in Code. And Code is a Microsoft product. Now, despite what you think about Microsoft, it's not your dad's Microsoft anymore. It's new. It's amazing. And this is a free tool they provide. And I'm going to show you a couple of neat features here. So there's something called multi-column text editing. So let's just suppose I want to add in ABC. I can do it multiple places. I can actually go across. So let's say Oracle decides that every instance of procedure, they're going to change it to proc. Right? I can change this, and you'll notice that the cursor change everywhere. And where this really comes in handy is, let's say I have this sleep function, and I currently have one parameter, right? But I need to change it to a second parameter that I want to default always to false, right? I can do it like that. Search and replace cannot do that very quickly. And last but not least, or 2 more things I'm going to show you in this is it actually has a bit of logic and IntelliSense in it, so that as you start writing, it actually picks up all the keywords. So you notice I have the word demo here. So if I were to create a new proc, so let's just do this, and I'm in my procedure and I want to call the demo procedure, I could just call demo, and you'll see that it's already picked up the word demo here. Is that clear? So it picks up words as you type. All the keywords are self-keywords. And another cool thing is if I hit Command R or Control R, I've got everything up here, so I can just do procedure assert and go down to that procedure. Lots of cool features, and SQL Dev unfortunately doesn't have this. It's not a knock on it. Same thing with Toad. Oh. It has, but it doesn't have multi-cursor editing with select all. It has click and command click multi-cursor editing. It has block editing? Okay. I guarantee, spend 5 days with code. It is not the same multi-cursor editing. It does a lot more than that. So the other thing is compiling your code. So I showed you, this is great, right, that you can edit it in code, but then how do you compile? So either I copy and paste this and put into SQL Developer, or I have to take the file, and all my files disappeared, and I have to, like I showed you before, I have to drag and drop and then compile and go back and forth. That's a waste of time. Thankfully, there's a guy called Morten Branton, and he developed a plugin that you can actually compile straight in code. So I can just say compile to this compilation string, and it actually compiles the package directly into the connection string that you predefine. And you get all your error stuff here. So I put errors because this doesn't really exist, but you can see your errors down here, and if it was successful, you'll see a success message or no errors. So this doesn't look intuitive at first because I was really hesitant when I first saw it. However, once you actually develop with this for a long time, you'll never go back because it's just that quick. The only time I use SQL Developer is to query. For development, it's all in code. And for those of you who use Atom, it's the same thing. Atom and code are very similar, some slight differences. And the last thing is building releases. So a lot of times with Oracle, unfortunately, generating a release file is complicated. So what you want to do is think about how you can automate it, and using the tools like Node.js can really help. Now, the example I'm going to show you is on OS utils. How many people here have heard or used of OS utils? Okay, a few of you. What you don't maybe know behind the scenes is when I first started writing it out is not just to write good code, but to be able to build the entire application in one click, essentially. And so I'll show you what that actually looks like is if I type node app, so I've written a Node.js script, and it will actually generate this is the output that I put, but it will generate all the PL SQL files. It will kind of like merge them all into one because I have one install file. It regenerates all the documents on the fly. And then if I wanted to, I could actually commit to the database at the same time, or commit to GitHub at the same time. So think about that. Another thing that I won't demo here is how many times have you forgotten like a / or a / at the end of a view? No one? Right? If you do that in a release file, it really screws things up. So in some of my release files or build files, will actually detect on views if you're missing a / So we know ahead of time that it's missing, and either we auto-inject it or you can manually inject it. So just think differently and think about when you have repetitive steps to automate them as much as possible. So that's all the tools I wanted to show today. In closing, a lot of people, when I talk to them about this, the first reaction and the number one line I hear is, well, that's going to take time for me to learn. Right? Is anyone thinking that right now? A few? Okay, and it's not worth my time. So hold on, how many people put up their hands thinking that's going to take time to learn? Okay, of those people, how many of you have driver's license? All of you? Okay. You took time to learn to a driver's license, right? If you didn't get a driver's license, you'd still be walking here. So just think about that. There's always, improvement takes time to learn, but your life will be better. So think about that next time you're struggling and saying, I don't want to spend time on it. It just takes a day and you're good to go. What? Well, sorry, it takes time to learn. If it takes time, it is okay, yes. All right, that's it. Thanks a lot. And if you have any questions on this, come see me after.
Wow, you were too quick. I could have taken time to show the OS Utils website or something.
I had a lot of pressure from you to keep it on.
All right, so Dietmar asked for Martin's minute. Should we do that? Yeah. Are you good? All right, let's go.
So I'll try to stay within my 10 minutes of fame. I take a completely different stab at being a developer. I'll be talking about soft skills. Really, soft skills? Yeah, because for me, this is like the master key to productivity and project success. According to CEOs from LinkedIn or Udemy, effective communication is like the #1 lacking skill in the US workforce. But make no mistake, in Europe and other places of the world, we are not doing much better. So I typically like to phrase it this way: you realize the importance of soft skills once you meet a person who doesn't have any, right? And so you see it, I mean, most of us will have a project going bad, or no, we know somebody who has a project which went bad, right? So we've seen that. In the beginning, things start out smoothly, everything is fine, no strict regulations whatsoever. Once you start not meeting their expectations, things become really more complicated, they get more picky, you have more control meetings, status reports whatsoever, and it can end in an outright conflict. And myself, in the beginning, working for Oracle, I had a project like that where I lost the trust of the client and I had to spend another 7 months in that project, which was really painful. So this is not something to look forward for. Also, aside from smooth projects, there's a lot of money on the line because people will do business with and refer business to people they know, like, and trust. And so there is a lot of money on the line, not just for freelance consultants, but for everybody if you want to advance. And I mean, there's competition out there. Technical skills is one thing, but if you know how to work with the client in a trustful relationship, you cannot be replaced easily. So when trust is key, how can we actually build that? And I want to share a few things that I've learned along the way, which helped me tremendously. APEX is an awesome tool to do agile development, quick prototyping, deliver results quickly. So getting feedback early and often is really key to me. So in the first 2 iterations, and the first one might be even like on a time frame 2 to 4 weeks, get it out, engage the users, and within the 2 first iterations, make sure you validate all the risky things. You have interfaces, is the data quality good, on the right granularity, right frequency, does the overall process work? Also, engage the business users, let them decide the direction of the application. So if it works out well, they will actually be the champions of the application and sell it internally. So acceptance is also a lot easier. I mean, we don't make mistakes, right? But in the unusual case that we do, be open about it. Don't try to cover it up. And actually, when things go wrong, it's an opportunity to actually gain their trust. So I remember with the German telecom shops, a few days before the production release, we had to make a change to the database character set, and it went bad. So I went up to my client and said, okay, it was my mistake, I'm sorry. This is the impact. These are the 2 things that we can do to fix it. I would recommend the first one. It'll take 2 days and we're back in business. When you deal with things in this manner, it actually builds trust, because if something goes wrong, they know you will talk to them. When they don't hear from you, that's the one thing they like the most, everything is good. Whenever you run late on a deadline, make sure you use an appropriate time frame to communicate the delay. So if you're running late for 5 minutes, call 5 minutes beforehand. If you run late a day, tell them 1 day before. You cannot run a month late and tell them 1 day before the deadline. This will not resonate well. This one actually surprised me about the impact it makes to look really professional. A friend of mine, an excellent project manager, he always came into the meetings having the meeting minutes already filled out. So he would come in, we had a WebEx session or putting it up on the beamer, and he was preparing all the questions he wanted to have answers and clarification to. And he would even outline like different alternatives and cross the ones out that we didn't use. And everybody would see managing these meeting minutes, and when we were done, he would just wrap it up, send it out immediately and say, okay, you have 2 business days to reject or comment on the meeting minutes, else they are accepted. By that, you have a high degree of accountability on all parts, and everybody hates writing meeting minutes, so they will love you even more. So often I see the IT department believing they are the most important department in the whole company, and that they know so much better what the business users actually use. But this is not the case. I mean, our job is to enable the business to do a better job, to bring in more revenue, so that the IT department can actually be paid. And if you come from a place of respect and trying to really help the client, to care about them, it changes the balance of your relationship. We all make mistakes, but try to make fewer. If you are diligent, double-check, triple-check your work, and really care about the results, it'll make a huge difference. Also, really important is to manage the expectations. Whenever you have to hand in a document as a deliverable, make sure to clarify what is the audience, what is the granularity, what do you really expect me to deliver? And I will send you a sample halfway through, so that you are really clear on what you have to deliver. So by doing all these things, I've managed basically so often to come into a project which was deemed to take just 3 months, and then I stay there for 5 years or longer. So people have projects, they always have problems that they need help with, and once they trust you, they want to keep that relationship. You might say, yeah, these points are really simple and obvious, but common sense is so often, unfortunately, not common practice. And there is this ancient saying, to know and not to do is not to know. It's been picked up recently by other authors, but also like a common philosophy in ancient history. So it really means if you are not really employing it and making it instinctual, then you still have to revisit and think about what you could improve. Because only when you actually change what you're doing, using better tools, for example, it's not worth much. So no questions here, but you can find me with a beer at the event later today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I owe you 1 minute and 45 seconds. Dimitri, it's your turn. Just say the word and I start the timer.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about interactive reports. It has always, or for a long time, it has been a jewel of Application Express, but I often see that many people don't use the full potential of interactive reports yet. So I want to show a couple of things. So here, this is an interactive report, and we want to do a filter, for example. So you click here. People love this, right? And who doesn't know this? So everybody knows this. I didn't show anything new here. So you can use actions. You can do many things here. You can also save it. But basically, this is what the user will do. I can give it a name, and I can switch to the reports in different views. Now, the first thing I want to show is you can act with those interactive reports through a link as well. So the previous presenters already talked about like the APEX URL. So what you can do, so the requirement is whenever we click in a report, we want to drill down to this report and pre-select, for example, Frank's record, right? So what I see is people, they go in, they create a hidden item, and they fill that, and in the query, they use a bind variable to reference that item. So you can perfectly do that, but you don't have to do that. So in your URL, in the last two parameters, it's like page items, page values. So what you can do here is you can say interactive report equal, and equal is a default, so you don't even have to do that. For example, customer first name is my column name, and I want to see Frank. I see it. I have it here. So who didn't know this? You see? So many people, it has been in for a very long time, but we don't use the full potential. And so this is one way. So setting filters through a URL, through a link, that's one way of doing things. Now, let's say I want to call this report here, the saved report. How do I do that straight away? So from a link, I want to come to this page, preset the saved report. So what you do is you go to this page. So somebody saved, as a developer, we saved a report. And here you go to the saved reports section, and you have the alias. You can create an alias for it, or add an alias. And here it says the example, the link that you need to call. Basically, who was in my session about cheat sheet, I talked about like the APEX URL as well, and this is basically the request that you enter. So here, if we use ir_r1, so let me just reset this, remove that. So in the request, third parameter, or actually fourth, ir_r1. You see? So straight from a link, we can go to a saved report. Okay. So that's URL, and there are many more options. Actually here, the slides will be made available. So this is what I'm going to show, and here there's the full documentation. So you have the link where you find things that I'm going to show. So let me go back to the application. Sometimes you want to do things from PL SQL as well. So we want to set a filter from a PL SQL code. So here I have a button. When I click this, I set the interactive report through PL SQL. So let me show you that code. So here, I do something to get the interactive report of this page. I don't need to do this, but I call the APEX IR package, and there's a procedure called add filter. You basically give it a few parameters, which report you want to do, and here you say my report column is this, my value is this, and my operator is this. You can do equal, you can lower than, higher than, any of those. But it might be real useful, where before I knew that all this existed, I would create different pages and then preset the interactive report. No, I don't have to do this anymore. Just one page with the interactive report, and either I use the URL or I use this PL SQL package. The next thing, we can do the same with a dynamic action. But here, so here I type in, for example, Frank. I don't see anything here, probably because I'm using the last name or something, or I didn't make it capital. So while I'm filling in items, I reset, well, I'm refreshing the interactive report. Now, what does it take to do this? Not much. One dynamic action. So we have an item on the page, so I'm not using this here. I could hide this bar, interactive report bar. I'm using a page item here, and while I'm typing, I have a dynamic action. On change, I'm refreshing the interactive report. Just you specify the region of this interactive report. Now, if you just do this, it will not work yet. There's one more thing you have to do. the page items to submit, you have to define. And then in your query, you define, okay, this is the item I'm using. Okay. Here, the next page, I have two interactive reports. So if I now do the same thing, I use ir_cust first name Frank. Like it says, okay, I don't know which one because there are two. So how can you work with this? You can define between square brackets which one you want. You see? So the same things apply for here. You would do the same thing. You would go to this page. You go to, attributes. You go to the saved reports, and here you see if you have multiple, Apex is really helping you, and it tells you what you have to put in there. The last thing I wanted to say about interactive reports, Apex is dictionary-based. Like, it's a metadata-driven, I mean. So you can query anything you do in your Apex application. So here we use a combination of techniques where we use the Apex dictionary to query which interactive reports do we have on the page, and which ones are the saved ones, and we are showing them in some cards. So this is a classic report that looks like a card. Behind the scenes, it's querying Apex application page IR report, it's querying page region, and it's generating a URL here. So when I click, for example, on this card, it will change this interactive report to report 1. So I find this useful as well to make an interactive application more user-friendly based on interactive reports in combination with some card. And you can make it really dynamic. Okay, so in the slides you find the rundown of that. And there's one more thing I want to say. If you want to learn more about reporting, I showed a really tiny bit of what you can do. Interactive report, you have no interactive grid, but also classic reports you have. And you have SQL, you have analytical functions that you can combine with all those tools. A good way to learn more about those things is going to the packaged applications. There's a sample reporting app which shows you many of the things that you can do with, in combination with reporting. I hope you enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dimitri. As usual, the best advice is read the documentation, look into sample packaged applications, and do it over and over again. In the next release, there's new documentation, there's improved documentation, and you can always find some helpful things in there. All right. Daniel is going to show us extensibility of APEX.
So, hey everybody, I'm talking about how to extend standard APEX functionality. The past years as an APEX developer showed me that the customer needs are sometimes further than the standard functionality of APEX. Sometimes you have to build some components new or in a different way. And I will show you multiple ways how to achieve this. First of all, the most obvious thing is to use plugins. It's the most simple way to integrate. There is an online register on APEX World, for example. These are all open source plugins. So probably free to use. Always check the license. So it is allowed for commercial use, for example. If you want commercial support, there are some companies that build commercial APEX plugins like Forex. APEX Office Print is plugin-based, or the Smart Pivot plugin from Christian Rokita, for example. I show you how to integrate one. So you download one from Apex World, for example. It's a zip file. You unzip that file, so you get the plugin SQL file out of there. You navigate to shared components, plugins of your app, click the import button, and upload the plugin export SQL file. Then you're ready to go. You have multiple components. For example, you can use it for items, regions, dynamic actions, and stuff like that. And you can place it on your page as it were a native component from Apex. It's most simple to use for all other developers because there are multiple declarative settings. You don't have to code anything, just use it. For example, these plugins are used in probably every project. This is the Select 2 plugin. So it's Ajax-based. It has lazy loading support. If you have thousands of records that get selected, it would be good to fetch 50, fetch the next 50, and so on. So you can search in there, select the value. It's pretty nice to use. Beside the standard file upload, I like this plugin a lot. So just select multiple files, open. You get a visual indicator. It's nice for the user. And yeah. That's the plug-in part, most simple way to use. Next would be do some custom JavaScript coding. So the first thing I start is to reuse code, actually. So I go to GitHub, check out some libraries. I search there. Here I searched for an alert plugin, so some nice way to show the user some nicer alert or confirm dialogues. Always have a look at if the JavaScript framework is in active development. So this developer has 34 releases, and the last release or last change was a month ago. So I'm pretty sure it's active develop. And always have a look at the license file, and here it's the GNU license, and GitHub shows you in a nice way that commercial use for this license type is allowed. So I downloaded the zip file, the release of this JavaScript library, uploaded it here in this demo application to the static application files, and integrated it on the particular page. On page level, you have here JavaScript file URLs. I integrated it here, and for the CSS file, I integrated it on the CSS section. So let's run that page. You all know how a standard browser alert looks like. It's in every browser different. In Internet Explorer, for example, it's very ugly. In Chrome too. So this is a way to integrate it and show some nicer dialogues, for example. In this page, I included a second JavaScript file. The library was called slide reveal because a customer had the need to have some slide in region with some information. So at first, I integrated that JavaScript file too. See it here. I integrated some custom JavaScript file from myself. That's basically this functionality. If you read the docs from that library, it's getting clearer. And integrated as dynamic actions on the page. So let's switch to dynamic actions. I have to use the tab lock thing. It happens every time. So the slider is here initiated, goes to a static ID of a region. And if I click that button, slide reveal will toggle that region, for example. So let's click that button, and there you have some slide in region. In there are standard Apex components, and it's a nice way to save your disk space and display additional information, for example. So The next thing would be extending standard components that are already there. So I picked the interactive grid, and this is normally the default view of an interactive grid, and I included some way to have a chord layout, for example. To achieve such things, you go to your grid settings, to the attributes. First of all, you have to enable the detail view. And I copy and pasted from the standard APEX region a chord template, the HTML code. It was shown before for the interactive report. It's the same thing. Copy the HTML in there. These are the text marks for the column names. And you're ready to go and have a nice chord layout. Of course, it can be a bit nicer, but it's some finishing is needed. But just to get you an idea of that. At the end, if you are not 100% sure if the universal theme fits you, or you are not so into CSS and styling stuff, you always have the possibility to change the user interface too. So a couple of days ago, a nice guy from Croatia, I think, Luka, published his theme style. I used it in this demo application, and as you see, the complete UI changes. I think it's really clean, what he built. And if you have a look at the custom CSS, so 280 lines in there. Yeah, not everyone can do it, so it's a nice way to extend the user interface too. I'm finished.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel, just for showing us to think outside the box. Don't take everything as given, and there are no limitations. APEX brings in so many features, but you can extend it, and that's why I love APEX. So, we are done. Everyone was a bit quicker. I figure my preparing speech to those guys was a bit harsh. But that gives us some time for Niels to give us some organizational information.
Actually, I wanted to give a 10-minute speech about some APEX feature, but I guess you're done for the day right now. So are we looking for more fun? Okay. Wasn't it a fun day already? Well, I'll bring you the fun stuff right now. So, everybody who's looking for more fun, at 6:30 the bus will leave in the front of the hotel. There will be multiple buses leaving for our event. That's the Apollo Theater in the city center of Düsseldorf. So 6:30, remind that, change your clothes, powder your nose, whatever you do, and then get your fit, and come to the bus. So I will be standing also in the lobby. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I've put all the data here on the paper, also prepared from Simone, of course. We know already Simone, yes, she does a great job. So we go to that Apollo Theater, and then afterwards at 10:30 the show will end. And then you have another hour spending time in the bar, drinking beer or whatever you like to drink. And then after or during that time, during that hour, the buses will already leave. So they start leaving to the hotel. So if you stay at the bar, no problem. The last bus will leave after the bar is finished. And for those of you that like to stay longer, it is possible to do that. The Next Gen has a nice location for that. That's called El Papagayo. It's in the Mertensgasse 2. And that will stay open until 5 o'clock. So, but just promise me one thing. whatever happens over there stays there. Yeah? There's no talk afterwards about that. And from our DOAC side, the event actually ends at 10:30. So after the buses will leave to the hotel. So going over there to that location is your own responsibility, and if you pay, of course, your own drinks for that. And you have to make sure that you get a taxi cab back to the hotel, because we want to see everybody alive here on the 3rd day of APEX Connect. Okay? So feel free to get yourself fit for the event. I'm really looking forward to it, and see you soon. So 6:30, lobby, hotel.